Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Ricky Fraley, and on this channel I like to talk about true crime. This is going to be the second video going over the Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell case, and this video is going to go more over the date by date of what happened since August of 2019 with regards to the case. But before I get into that, I would like to highlight a comment from the last video. Comment was made by Tiny Princess, and Tiny Princess did point out to me that Joseph Ryan never actually adopted Colby. Colby and actually Joe Ryan's sister talk about it on their channels on YouTube. They will be on screen right now. I'd like to thank Tiny Princess. I did look into it after I received the comment, and there is nowhere online that I could find that's no legal documents that say that Colby was actually legally adopted by Joseph Ryan. I guess most of the sources that I took from, and then I assumed that the adoption actually happened because of the name change, that Colby took the Ryan name. There was no actual adoption that actually happened, at least as far as I can tell, and I would like to thank Tiny Princess for that. So if you ever have any comments or anything that I get wrong, please don't hesitate to drop a comment down below, and I will respond to it or look into it as soon as I can. So without further ado, I would like to get into the case. So, in August of 2019, Larry and Kay Woodcock would speak to JJ for the last time on August 10th. And on August 30th, Lori would return JJ's service dog, citing a change in life circumstances as the reason for doing so. So JJ had a service dog, and she was bringing it back, saying that there was a change in their life circumstances that warranted her bringing the dog back. The next month, in September of 2019, Tylee, JJ, and Lori would move to Rexburg, Idaho, to be close to Chad Daybell, and on September 8th, Tylee would be last seen in Yellowstone National Park with Lori, her uncle Alex, the same uncle from the last video, and JJ. The morning after Tylee disappeared on September 9th, investigators would later say that Alex Cox's cell phone GPS had placed him in Chad Daybell's backyard on the property for about 2 hours. So he was there the morning after the last time that Tylee was seen on Alex Cox's property in the backyard for around 2 hours. The cell phone was pinging the tower for about 2 hours. Roughly 14 minutes after Cox left, Chad Daybell would text his wife Tammy, "I spotted a big raccoon along the fence. I hurried and got my gun, and he was still walking along. I got close enough that one shot did the trick. He's now in our pet cemetery." That was what Chad texted his wife Tammy at the time. According to eyewitnesses, JJ was last seen alive at his new school in Rexburg, which was Kennedy Elementary, on September 22nd of that year. A doorbell video would also capture JJ playing with a friend on this day. Melanie Gibb, the friend from the last video, who was staying with Lori that weekend, recalled that on the last night that JJ was seen, her boyfriend, whose name is David Warwick, would say that he saw Alex carry JJ into Lori's apartment. However, the next day on September 23rd, when Warwick asked to see JJ, Lori told him that he was being a zombie and Cox had taken him away. Investigators would say that Alex Cox's cell phone had shown that he had returned to Chad Daybell's backyard that morning, but only stayed for 17 minutes on that time. The very next day, so September 24th, Lori would inform the school that JJ would no longer be attending, as she would be homeschooling him from then on. So, she was pulling him out of school, allegedly. Julie Rowe, author and former friend and colleague who had published multiple books with Chad, allegedly had spoken to Chad sometime late September. He would allegedly say to Rowe, "My plan can't move forward until Tammy's dead, or until Tammy dies." Rowe, however, believed that Chad was referring to his life plan, or the plan that God had made for him. She would say, "I felt darkness in it. I felt his frustration and his anger, and that was a big caution for me. It was enough of one that I talked to my husband about it, and I was very concerned." So the next month, October of 2019. On the 1st of October, Lori would rent a storage locker in Rexburg for $53 a month. On the next day, the 2nd, her nephew-in-law, Brandon Boudreaux, would become a target of a failed drive-by in Gilbert, Arizona. The drive-by was allegedly carried out by someone driving a green Jeep Cherokee, which was still registered to Charles Vallow himself. On the 9th of that month, Tammy Daybell would call the police after a masked assailant attempted to shoot her in her garage with what she believed at the time was a paintball gun. The next day on the 10th, a payment was sent from Tylee's bank account to her older half-brother, Colby. The same Colby who it turns out, wasn't actually adopted. Sorry. The payment was sent from Tylee's account to him with a message that read, "We love you." And a second payment would be sent on the 16th of that month, 6 days later, this time with just a heart emoji instead of a written message. Colby would soon grow worried when, aside from these payments and accompanying text on the payments, he had not heard from Tylee. His repeated calls did go unanswered, and this only heightened his concern. 3 days after that second payment, on October 19th, and exactly 10 days after the masked assailant, Tammy would be found dead in her home in Salem, Idaho, roughly 5 miles away from Rexburg. At the time, her death was ruled as coming from natural causes, as an autopsy was never performed due to Chad Daybell declining one, and the coroner just didn't see a reason to overrule his decision at the time. Throughout the rest of that month, October, Alex Cox would be captured on security video footage using Lori's storage unit multiple times, usually by himself. Sometime between October 31st and November 1st, so that night, Alex Cox and Lori's niece, Melanie Boudreaux, were reportedly seen by Brandon Boudreaux, who is Melanie's ex-husband, so the Boudreaux family. They were seen by Brandon Boudreaux picking up in Chandler, Arizona, before driving up to Rexburg to discard children's items on a curb. So, what happened that night was that Alex Cox and Melanie Boudreaux were reportedly seen by Brandon picking up children's items and bringing them to Rexburg to basically just throw them out on the curb, I presume for a garbage truck to come pick them up. A lot of this information came from a private investigator named Rich Robertson, who Brandon hired after the failed drive-by attack on his life that forced him into hiding. So, moving into November now. On November 5th, Lori and Chad Daybell would get married on a beach in Hawaii. This was only, if you remember, 2 weeks after the death of his former wife, Tammy. They would inform others when asked that Tylee had died back in 2017 and that Lori had no other children that were minors. Robertson, along with close family members, would later say that it was around this time that it became increasingly obvious that something was wrong with the children. Robertson would recall, "It was during that period that we realized we were all seeing the adults, being Lori Vallow, Alex Cox, Melanie Boudreaux, but we weren't seeing any of the kids. They weren't seeing JJ and they weren't seeing Tylee." This would result in Kay Woodcock, who is JJ's grandmother, deciding to contact the Rexburg Police Department and request a welfare check done for JJ, as it had been months since she had last heard from her grandson. This welfare check would not happen until November 26th, and Lori would claim that JJ was safe and staying with her friend Melanie Gibb, over in Arizona, and told authorities that Tylee was away at Brigham Young University in Idaho. Authorities would then ask Melanie about the whereabouts of JJ, and while at first she didn't want to incriminate her friend in any way, so she withheld information, she eventually did come clean with telling them that she did not know where JJ was and that he had never actually been with her. The next day on the 27th, Chad and Lori were seen packing, and they would abandon everything in Rexburg, including the contents of Lori's storage unit, and subsequently disappeared. Rexburg police would also begin searching for the children, and would obtain 3 search warrants for the residences of Lori, her brother Alex, and for Melanie Boudreaux, her niece. On the 29th of November, Alex Cox would marry Zulema Pastanes, I hope I said that right, in Las Vegas, and he legally changed his name to Alex Pastines. The next day, on November 30th, Melanie Boudreau would also wed Ian Pawlowski in Las Vegas. So, they both got married. So now in December of 2019, Lori and Chad would run back to Hawaii during the investigation for her children that was now underway. On the 11th of that month, authorities would decide that Tammy Daybell may have passed away under suspicious circumstances, and as such decided her death needed to be further investigated. This resulted in her body being exhumed and an autopsy being performed. The very next day, however, on December 12th, Alex Cox, the brother of Lori Vallow-daybell, whatever her last name is at this point, Alex Cox would pass away, and his death via autopsy would be attributed to natural causes, specifically blood clots. Clotting blood, sorry, I'm Jamaican, and high blood pressure. It would take until December 20th for the Rexburg Police Department to officially announce an investigation into Tylee and JJ's disappearances and the involvement of the FBI, as they were bouncing from state to state, so this was a federal matter. It took until December 20th for them to announce the investigation. While it's not clear exactly when this interview was done, Ian Pawlowski would describe Lori's alleged religious beliefs, including the existence of the zombies, the existence of teleportation, and people who have been possessed by a demon. He described this to law enforcement, obviously. Melanie's attorneys say the document was written by Ian after he met with law enforcement officers and contains extremist beliefs that Melanie herself does not hold. Among those beliefs are the existence of translated beings who may, with the Lord's permission, teleport, and zombies who have had their original spirits forced from them and have been possessed by a demon, disembodied spirit, or what's described as a worm or a slug. In this document, Ian wrote that Melanie told him that she was concerned that Alex might have had something to do with the disappearance of JJ and Tylee, obviously. Melanie had been told by Chad and Lori that her children had been possessed and had indeed become two of these zombies. Ian Pawlowski wrote, "She shared concerns that she's been told Brandon Boudreau needed to die, and that may indicate that Tylee and JJ needed to die as well. She told me she was worried that Alex may have had to take care of the kids. She explained that Alex had great faith and never wavered in his trust in the Lord. No task would be too difficult or too great for him. When I asked for clarification, she restated her concern verbatim." There's a lot to digest there, but basically, the police are getting into the views that they had religiously and the concerns that the people around them were having for the children, because obviously Lori and Chad thought that they were possessed and thought that they were going to handle them or deal with them in a way that is not conducive to staying alive, if you get my meaning. So, January 2020. January last year. On January 3rd, the Rexburg Police Department, with help from the FBI, would search Tammy and Chad's former home. On the 25th of that month, Chad and Lori would be located in Kauai, Hawaii, and the court would serve Lori with an order requiring her to produce her children within 5 days. As expected, she was unable to produce said children by the 30th of January, 5 days later. This would ignite further suspicion of Lori having been responsible for the disappearance of her children, given her unwillingness to cooperate with authorities in finding them. You'd think that a mother who has 2 missing children wouldn't have just gotten up and gone to Hawaii to celebrate. It doesn't matter if she's getting married or not. You got 2 missing kids. You'd be out searching for them. You know what I mean? Nevertheless, days later, on February 10th, Tylee's cell phone would be found amongst Lori's belongings in Hawaii. And on February 20th, 10 days later, Lori Vallow would be arrested in Kauai and charged with 2 felony counts of desertion and non-support of dependent children. Meanwhile, a few days later, on February 26th, in Kauai, while awaiting extradition to Idaho, the judge would refuse to lower Lori's $5 million bail, which makes sense. So the next month, March of 2020, Lori would arrive in Idaho on the 5th of that month, and the next day, the 6th, she would have her first hearing. Her bail would finally be lowered down to $1 million. However, it was reported that local bail bond companies downright refused to help her make bail. Nobody was on her side at this point, and you can kind of understand why. The next month, on the 10th of April, the Idaho Attorney General's office confirmed that Lori and Chad were under investigation for conspiracy, attempted murder, and/or murder in the death of Chad's first wife, Tammy. However, neither were formally charged in connection with any crime in connection to Tammy's death. On April 20th, Madison County Prosecutor Rob Wood would release a list of 48 witnesses, including Chad, he may call at a trial, preliminary hearing, grand jury hearing, or any other hearing in this matter. This list would go on to include, but not be limited to, JJ's biological grandparents, Kay and Larry Woodcock, Melanie Gibb, Lori's friend, with whom at the time of the welfare check on November 26th, Lori would say JJ was with her, remember that. Reverend Colin Moore, also called Kahukoko, who was the Hawaiian minister that wed the couple when they got married, and Colby Ryan, Lori's eldest son, who had openly pleaded with her to disclose the location of his siblings. So fast forward to June 9th. Authorities would arrive at Chad Daybell's home in Salem, Idaho. They would begin a search in the area where Alex Cox's phone had pinged way back in September of 2019. And it was through this that they discovered the presence of human remains buried in shallow graves. This would result in the arrest of Chad Daybell later that same day, and a charge of 2 felony counts of destruction, alteration, or concealment of evidence. The next day, June 10th, Kay Woodcock would announce that one of the sets of remains did in fact belong to her grandson JJ, and the Ryan family would confirm the other set belonged to Tylee. So both families were able to come together and identify the bodies of both of the children. 9 days later, on June 19th, in an unsealed affidavit, authorities would confirm the identities of both sets of remains, and through court documents, the official cause of death and locations of the bodies where they were disposed of. JJ's body was found buried under a tree about 50 yards away from the house, wrapped in black plastic bags secured with duct tape. Meanwhile, investigators would find Tylee's grave in the Daybell's pet cemetery dismembered and partially burned. The affidavit also states that Lori believed that JJ and Tylee had become zombies, and that she and Chad were on a mission to rid the world of zombies. The couple believed that while a zombie's dark spirit is inhabiting a person's body, the person's true spirit goes into a sort of limbo and is stuck there until the host body is physically killed. Their friend, Melanie Gibb, told investigators, adding that it was a belief that Lori had learned from Chad. So, Lori didn't just make that up, she got it from Chad. I mean, if that wasn't obvious already. Investigators say that they believe Tylee's remains were buried on the morning of September 9th, and that JJ's were buried on the morning of the 23rd of September. Prosecutors believe that Tylee was buried in the same location that Chad had referenced when he texted his wife that morning about burying a raccoon in the pet cemetery. This was primarily due to the fact that investigators did end up digging up a significant part of this pet cemetery and found no raccoon remains. His family would later claim, however, that investigators only searched one of the family's pet cemeteries, which, I mean, if you need more than one pet cemetery, you should probably think about not having that many pets. On the 29th of June, another search warrant was executed on the home of Chad Daybell by the authorities. On July 30th, 2020, Lori would appear in court, now facing new felony charges of conspiracy to commit destruction, alteration, or concealment of evidence of her children's remains in Fremont County, and she pleaded not guilty and denied all allegations of wrongdoing. On August 21st of that same year, 2020, Chad Daybell would plead not guilty on all 4 of his felony counts. On September 1st, Fremont County Special Prosecutor Rob Wood filed a motion to join Chad and Lori's cases, writing that, due to the nature of the conspiracy charges alleged against the Daybells, the state's evidence in both cases is nearly identical, and the trial for each case will be nearly identical. The prosecution also cited concern for the family, not wanting them to have to endure 2 identical trials back to back while already grieving the loss of their children. Moving into this year, 2021. It would take until 2021 for a series of developments to take place within the case. The motion for the merger of both cases would be granted, and the scheduled date for the merged cases trial would be March 22nd. It would take until May 25th for both Lori and Chad Daybell to be formally charged with the murders of Tamara Daybell, Tammy, Tylee Ryan, and J.J. Vallow. However, 2 days later, Lori would be deemed incompetent and unfit to stand trial, resulting in a stay in her case. The judge would order her to be held in an Idaho mental facility and be evaluated for a period of 90 days. This stay would not stop Lori from being indicted by an Arizona grand jury on conspiracy to murder her husband, Charles Vallow, on June 29th. Prosecutors would also drop the charges for conspiracy to destroy, alter, or conceal evidence against Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow. However, a week later, on August 5th, the prosecution would announce their intentions to seek the death penalty for Chad Daybell. On August 30th, Lori would still be found incompetent due to an incomplete status update from the mental facility she was being seen at, and as such, another hearing would be set for September 8th, the same day on which Chad had a closed hearing. Now, if you're paying attention to the date, this is going to be uploaded on September 18th, so 10 days ago, on September 8th, Lori was deemed still unfit to stand trial after District Judge Stephen Boyce announced that she will continue to be held in the Idaho Department of Health facility for at least another 180 days, so about another 6 months. As a result, Chad Daybell's trial was also ruled to be pushed back from its original November 2021 date, despite an official date not being established as yet. However, he is required to have another hearing on the matter scheduled for October 5th and 6th, so I'll be looking out for more information on this case. It is still developing. Like I said, just 10 days ago, Lori was deemed unfit, and she's going to be held for at least another 6 months in the health facility. And as such, because their cases are joint, Chad Daybell's is also being pushed back. I guess we'll have to see what comes out of the hearing. I don't know if it'll be closed or not, or if we'll get more information out of it. But as of right now, that is where the trail ends on this case. I would like to give a quick shout out to YouTuber Ready to Glare. Back during the original shutdown in early last year, when I got sent home from work, because everybody got sent home from work, I was watching a lot of YouTube. This was well before I decided to start this channel. And Ready to Glare, she did a video on it. At this time, she was talking about how they were in Hawaii when their children were missing. It hadn't come out that they had been found yet or anything. And I've been following this case since then, since she started uploading videos on Lori vallow-daybell and this whole case. So I'd like to give her a shout out because that's where I actually got the start of the information for this case. Obviously, things have developed. As you can see, the last thing I have on here is from 10 days ago. But I will continue to keep an eye out on this case. If you want to keep an eye out with me, I encourage you to subscribe to this channel. I encourage you to go down below and follow me on Twitter. If you're feeling spicy, you can hop on my Patreon and help support the channel. So I guess that's where it stands now. They are both pending a trial in the deaths of the three, and Tammy, Chad's ex-wife, who he is a widower for, and JJ and Tylee, who all three of them deserve justice. So, if you'd like to watch with me, like I said, subscribe, follow me, and leave a comment, leave a like if you like. Let's talk about it. But until then, stay safe. I love you all. Goodbye.